How are we doing on levels?
We're doing okay.
Doing all right?
You bring yours down a bit.
Just a skosh?
Yeah, just a skosh.
I like that word, skosh.
That's a good word.
It is a good word. All right, I'm bringing it down a skosh. There we go.
Do you need the torch or you got your own?
You know, I brought my own. I came prepared. Look at that.
Cool.
Well, you know, we got some whiskey and some smokes to get into.
Yeah, let's do it.
Possibly even a topic. Any announcements? I feel like a church pastor right now. Like, hey, do we have any announcements to give to everybody? Hey, everybody, serve more.
We need people in children's ministry.
Forever in children's ministry.
Yeah.
No, I don't have any announcements.
All
At least
right.
I don't think
no
so.
announcements. Let's let's get into this
maybe
whiskey.
let's pour some whiskey.
Let's do it.
Let's roll.
All right.
We are the Old Fashioned Dad Podcast, seeking to love dads and men through the person and work of Jesus Christ, while entering into tough conversations on marriage, mental health, sex, and parenting, all while sipping good whiskey.
Okay, so for all of you watching us out on the YouTubes, we are drinking and smoking some Buffalo Trace.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, are we smoking Buffalo Trace?
Just drinking.
We're
just drinking.
So we're not smoking it.
No.
Okay.
And you were going to show the iPhone one, just see how that turns out. So.
Boom.
Boom.
Buffalo. You know, I used to be a drug and alcohol counselor to teenagers.
Okay.
And they are very creative in figuring out how to get high. And I learned that you can smoke alcohol.
Yeah, you know what I used to do?
Smoke alcohol?
I mean, in a way. so middle school, I'd sneak out at night. Not sure if my parents know this, but if my mom doesn't know, she'll find out on the podcast.
She's going to find out soon, yeah.
We'd sneak out at night, walk up to my middle school, and on the way there, you know, my friend I'd sneak out with would have, like, the little travel bottles he stole from his grandma's liquor cabinet or whatever.
Perfect.
But to add to the buzz you get from smoking cigarettes, you know, as a 14-year-old or whatever, we dip the butts, the filter in rubbing alcohol.
I know where you're going with this. I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, and it tastes like Swisher Sweets.
Yeah.
You let it dry and you smoke it and it tastes like cherries. I mean, it's probably killed half my brain cells, but you know.
That actually explains a lot. This, I'm just kidding. I did share a story recently about the creative ways that young people get high.
Okay. Was that on the podcast you were guest on, the other one?
No, I was just hanging out with a family friend.
Okay.
And we were talking, and they were just blown away that people would smoke alcohol, you know. And
how do you smoke alcohol? I mean, other than what I described.
I used to know because I just had to know, but you get it into like a container, a vessel of sorts, you know, and you can heat it up, and then the vapors are what you're smoking.
So
you know, and so then the vapors pass the blood-brain barrier, and so like what I've been told is 5 minutes of a couple of hits. Huffing alcohol is the equivalent of like a weekend of binge drinking.
Well, that's not fun.
No, so you could die from it, you know.
Yeah. It's kind of like taking alcohol through your anus. I've heard about people doing that.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I've heard the same thing. So I mean, just as bad is there people. Again, you don't have access to the stuff that makes you high. You can actually like crap in a bag and then huff the fumes. Yeah.
Sounds like some military training I've done.
Probably unintentionally. But these people, that's how crazy some of drug and alcohol addictions will go.
Sure.
Yeah, man, I don't have anything. I don't got any liquor. I don't got any meth.
Yep.
Oh, might as well poop in a bag.
Yeah, I got this bag and I got to take a dump.
Yeah. I heard good things can come out of this.
That's weird.
Oh,
does this relate to our topic today?
No, just banter.
Okay.
I'm hoping everybody enjoys it. You know, if you're walking away listening or watching anything that we are saying, that's the thing we want you to remember.
Yeah, well, they're definitely walking away after that.
Don't poop in a bag and smell it. Don't do it.
Resist the urge.
Resist the urge. Well, we do have some topics.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Also want to give a shout out to... You know, I don't actually have a shout-out I want to give to Buffalo Trace. They're big enough. We don't need to shout them out. But the cigar you're smoking, I'll give a shout-out to Continental Cigars, Dominican.
Okay.
Very tasty. I haven't actually had one in a minute, but you're enjoying one.
Yeah, it's good. It's
darker, right?
A little heavier, a little more robust than I usually smoke.
So about halfway through this cigar, you're going to be like...
I'll probably start vomiting, yeah.
Yeah. Head that way. But we do have some topics.
Okay.
Possibly, you and I were kind of tossing around some ideas. I kind of feel like we've been intermingling topics that are leaning somewhat political, socio-cultural.
Sure.
And I wanted to kind of...
Sociological,
yeah, which are always fun. I love those.
Yeah, I love those topics.
But I wanted to kind of come back towards some dad stuff.
Okay.
And there was 2 verses that kind of stuck out to me as I was thinking about this today, is when the topic came to me. I was like, hey, why don't we talk about that today? So I'm just going to pull the verses up, and you know what? We'll kind of see what happens. Maybe a conversation happens out of this.
Maybe.
I mean, this is the Old Fashioned Dad podcast. So
It is. That's true.
it's not the Old Fashioned Mom podcast, is it?
No.
No, it's not.
No,
Definitely
maybe
not.
that's in the making
For the wives?
I don't know. I'm not going
You're not gonna...
I will not commit Jenny to that.
So the 2 verses I was thinking about, so Ephesians was coming to mind, and these verses oftentimes get thrown at dads, and it's almost kind of like, hey dad, whatever's going on in your life, you need to be doing this, you need to be this Ephesians 5, Ephesians 6 dad. Okay, here it is, Ephesians 5:25. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. All right? Now, and I won't say the second one just yet. That verse, I can't even tell you how many times I've heard that verse in response to, like, if my marriage is going poorly, or if my wife isn't responding well to things, or, it was always kind of used as like, hey, you loving your wife well? You giving your life up to her as Christ would for you? That sort of thing. Almost like a guilt trip in some ways.
Sure. How effective is that in that context?
In that particular context, I just felt more shame than I felt like I was being, encouraged.
Right. I was like, yeah, I know I'm not living it well. Thanks for pointing out the obvious.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thanks again for the reminder.
Yeah.
The other verse, this one is, man, we could probably unpack this for a while. Or maybe not. Maybe we'll just both agree, like, yeah, we suck. Is Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1. No, that is not the right verse. That one is, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right.
I like that one too.
That one is really fantastic. But I'm going to pull up the right verse for you. So, Christian, talk for a second.
All right. So I guess on that verse, I think that's a key verse. I mean, you were kind of mentioning that it can be kind of wielded like a heavy club up against a dense dad's head. I found, to unpack that a little bit, I mean, I'm no scholar. I don't have a
you take that
commentary
back.
in
You
front of
take
me.
that back.
But I'd say the essence of that verse is that Jesus, what he modeled for us was a sacrificial leader. He came to die for us in our place, and if you're going to replicate that attitude towards our wives, towards our spouses, it kind of gets back to what we talked about during the sex episode with JK and Corey, and we've touched on before. And if our goal is to outlove our spouse, like, most of our conflicts with them are going to be remedied, because we're not thinking about what can I get. I'm giving more than I'm getting. You're going to be thinking, yeah, I'm giving. My job is to sacrificially lay down my life and sacrifice for my wife, for my family. You're not going to be thinking about your rights. You're going to be thinking about the sacrifice Jesus made, where he gave it all and we were undeserving.
Right.
Which is very convicting when you look at that, and it makes sense, and it also encourages us to think about marriage, not in the contemporary sense of, it's I get married to someone who's going to satisfy me or please me or make me happy, but I get married because it glorifies God, and it helps me understand better my relationship between God and myself.
100% agree. 100% agree. I like what you had to say about out-love, out-serve. I think you said those words.
Something like that.
I feel like you did. That's what I took away from it in my head.
That's good. If I didn't say it, I
He's
should.
already influeing. So I found the verse.
Okay.
It was a little bit further down. Verse 4. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up, in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Okay, so I've already failed at that.
I don't like that verse.
I've already failed at that one.
I'm gonna do the Thomas Jefferson. I'm just gonna scratch that out of my Bible.
Cut it out with some scissors? X-Acto knife that one out. I didn't see that one, Lord. Yeah. You've never provoked your child to anger, right?
Just last night.
Wow.
I mean, it was the night before, but it all blurs together.
It all
I've been more convicted of it lately, which is funny that we're talking about this. My wife has me reading this book that she read a while ago and told me I should have read, and I'm now seeing my need for it. It's called No Drama Discipline. Now, it's a secular book, but there's lots of good tips and stuff in there, and essentially, how to understand your kid's psychology and where they are developmentally to work with them, to empathize first, to talk first, not escalate, not to, agitate and provoke your kid, which tends to be my tendency. And last night, as I was doing it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is what I should not be doing.
So in the moment while you're provoking, you
right.
realize that you're provoking?
Right, I'm realizing the things coming out of my mouth are not de-escalating the situation, they're escalating it.
But I bet you, there was something inside of you that said, no, I need to do this. I need to hammer my kid, whatever that looked like.
Sure. I mean, in this particular situation, discipline was called for, a consequence was called for, and this book talks about, in the moment when things are elevated, that's not when you give your knee-jerk consequence. It comes afterwards, it comes after connecting with them, de-escalating the situation, helping them to, there's another book that is designed for kids that is really good, but it talks about how you name it. So, trying to teach the kid, okay, name what you're disappointed about, what you're frustrated about, put words to it, tame it, and so use techniques to calm yourself down, maybe take 3 deep breaths, clench all of your, body tight, things that keep them from just reacting, and then reframe it. So think about, okay, you're disappointed because of this, but what's the upside of that? Something to look forward to tomorrow, or whatever it is. So kind of a combination of, the kid book and this no drama discipline. It's been convicting, along with the Holy Spirit with that verse, because my tendency is to escalate and provoke and shame, and it's not good.
I think for me, I can be a bit of a slow boil. I don't know if that's.
So you're cool until you're not cool, and then just
and then
over.
I don't know that I necessarily explode like a volcano, but eventually at some point, I'm no longer cool. I'm hot.
Sure.
And
now is that in the sense of you just sound annoyed the rest of the day, or you're unnecessarily harsh with your kids?
I think I'm unnecessarily harsh in my tone.
Okay.
I'm not calling my kids names. That was just something that was instilled in me, and I don't think I've ever called my kids names, but I hope I haven't.
Yeah.
Might have to have them on the show to find out.
Yeah, my 9-year-old says fuck now that when he's
pissed off.
Pissed off because he learned it from daddy.
That must feel really good.
No, my wife just looks at me like, look what you done.
I think my 10-year-old will call me a butthole in jest. Kind of a butthole, Dad. And I'm part of me wants to smirk a little bit, but part of me wants to be like, I brought you into this world. Well, technically your mom brought you into this world, but right. I helped.
I could take you out.
Yeah, I could take you out.
Now, is he saying it? She. Sorry.
She, yeah. I don't have a he.
Yeah, I know. I was just thinking, scrolling through your kids. Nope, no he. Is it disrespectful, or kind of a, hey, you're kind of being a dick?
Kind of that one.
Okay. Yeah,
kind of that one.
I try to tell, my son and Jenny, if I'm, being a jerk, respectfully call it out, remind me, hey, this isn't what you wanted. This is the kind of dad you want to be,
What's really interesting is, so my 10-year-old, being very emotionally aware, who would have thought, being the kid of a therapist, she recognizes my frustration, my grumpy anger patterns.
Really?
And so rather than respond in anger herself to my frustration and anger, she will kind of reposition her body posture to show that she's sorry.
Okay.
And then she'll look at me and go, Daddy, can I give you a hug? And I'm just like,
I can't be mad at you.
Yeah. I think one time I said to her, look, that's manipulation, okay? I'm mad at you, I'm frustrated at you because you took candy you know, for like the umpteenth, billionth time.
Sure.
You ate a whole pack of Snickers and you stuffed it in your bed. You know that you shouldn't be doing that. I'm mad at you, and like, I feel almost justified in my anger and my wrath because I'm like, you've disobeyed. Like, you have literally disobeyed. This is like the millionth time you've disobeyed, and now you need a harsh consequence, and that comes in the form of the dad voice, and that comes in the form of like, you're going to lose privileges.
Yeah.
But she recognizes, at least in the moment, that I'm frustrated, mad because of something that she did, and she then goes ahead and says, "Dad, I love you. Can I give you a hug?" And I'm just like, oh, ooh, okay.
Yeah, that's our son does similar. I mean, it's hard to tell like what's manipulation and what's just him.
Yeah.
Actually feeling sorry, you know. Yeah, so we have kind of similar. My son won't vocalize it, but you know, even if it is an escalated situation after like the consequence or discipline, you know, the follow up to the discipline, you know, is always like, I forgive you, you know, we're good, we love you no matter what, you know, no matter how good you are or you know how much you know, whether you're good or whether you're bad, you know, like we love you the same. It doesn't change anything, you know, just kind of like reaffirming like we're solid. You know?
So, are you a dad? And I think this
Yes.
could be relevant for.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. All right. I walked into that one. Are you a dad that really falls on the? I think this is relevant to our listeners, watchers. That falls on the side of like just, hey, it's compliance first. It's just compliance first.
That's my tendency.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's good, but it tends to be my tendency. I'm trying to focus more on like where the heart's at. I mean, the thing I'm always telling my son, you know, because he tends to be very spontaneous, and so if he gets an idea, like it has to happen right now, and so we'll be in the middle of dinner, and he'll get up and run off and like start building something.
Yeah.
And so the thing I'm trying to like get into him is if you want to do something, you ask, but you listen first. It's always listen first,
Yeah.
and then you ask. It's not just I'm going to go do this, or you don't say anything, you just run off. So to an extent. But I would say that I think that what I'm trying to do there is okay, is good. But sometimes, I just get pissed off because he's not being compliant, or I perceive him as being disrespectful, and that's kind of chaps my hide.
Well, I've seen
as opposed to being concerned about like his heart.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, when I'm focused on compliance, I am nowhere near like concerned about like my daughter's hearts. I'm just like, look, I'm being this way because you have been disobedient or you're not learning what you need to learn.
Sure. And
then also sometimes just like compliance is a much easier path to take. I mean, psychologically it feels much easier when in actuality it probably isn't.
Right.
But I've literally seen when I've demanded compliance from my daughters, especially my 10-year-old, it's just like the way that I go about it, I just crush her. You know, I could see like a little piece of her get crushed. And I always have to go back. Like, I make sure if I'm demanding and yelling at my daughter in a heated moment, I'm going back, I'm sitting down, I'm laying down with her, I'm asking for forgiveness, I'm talking with her, and I'm sharing with her, like, hey, this is why I said what I said, but the way in which I said it, you didn't deserve. You know, and there is something to godly compliance and godly obedience, and I think that's ultimately what you and I are trying to, like, have our kids be and do. Right. But man, do we fail at that?
Yeah. Well, and the danger with being focused on compliance is that if that's the case, you're never really going to like talk to your kid or engage with them unless they're not compliant. And then they have this association with you as like, I'm never going to get attention unless I'm doing something I'm not supposed to do.
Dude, that's so right. Like I've actually talked with a handful of dads that come through my practice that they're like, I don't care about my kid's emotions. I don't care about his heart. He needs to be compliant because that's ultimately what's his best. Like, they need to get into college. They need to get a good job. And if they don't listen to me and follow my instructions, then like their life is going to be screwed up. And I remember communicating to one dad. I was like, okay, so let's say they do listen to you and you just remain a hard ass this entire time. Let's say they get into the good school, they get the good job, but what if they just hate your guts?
Right.
Like, he's like, fine, I don't care, as long as they are healthy and have a good job and they can pay their bills and are married. And I was like,
wow.
But then you have a son or a daughter that just hates you for the rest of your life. I doubt you're going to like that.
Sure. Well, I mean, that demonstrates to me that his top value is worldly success for their kid, as if that's going to make them happy. You know,
Right.
like, you know,
Right.
totally neglecting their hearts and that relationship. And I mean, and you know, I've heard plenty of, you know, I'm no expert on this, but I've heard plenty of times of, like, our relationship we have with our Father, whether good or bad, tends to be how we relate to God.
Yep.
If we had, you know,
100%.
a crappy father who's absent, you're going to look at God as a crappy guy just looking to crush you, or he's
Exactly.
distant. You know,
Exactly.
like I don't think any job's worth, you know, that.
And I think this is the point that I wanted to make when reading this verse, is that as fathers, we have a very, very significant role. Like, we may not biologically birth the kid and whatnot, which is also very important, and mothers have a fantastic bond with their kids and play an integral role in their kids' life. But as fathers, we have a very significant role in stewarding our kids' hearts.
Yeah.
You know, and that should be the primary focus of our parenting, not necessarily, you know, do they make it in a top school, or do they, you know, get the six-figure job.
Sure.
Those are all.
Do they listen to me?
Yeah, exactly. Like, we want them to know. We want them to know Christ. We want them to know that, you know, this world is not everything out there.
Sure. Now, maybe, I mean, I don't know if maybe we lost some of our listeners when we start talking about, you know, shepherding or stewarding our kids' hearts. I mean, what do you mean by that? I mean, I've read plenty of John Eldredge, and so I'm very familiar with kind of that concept. But what do you mean by stewarding the heart? Like, what does that mean?
So when I think of steward, I think of, like, something that has been entrusted to me, you know, like a valuable possession, and, you know, maybe I don't know, let's take a hypothetical, like a good neighbor lends me their collectible car, you know, like, let's go with a 1967 Corvette.
Yeah.
Okay, show car ready and everything like that. They lend it to me and say, hey, you can borrow this for a month. You know, I'm going to steward it. I'm going to make sure that it's taken care of. I'm going to make sure that it's at least returned in the condition that I received it, if not better. You know, and so I guess the point is that stewarding means I'm taking something that's valuable, that's not mine. I'm in charge of it, and I'm taking care of it, making sure that it doesn't break, making sure that it is treated well. And in this case, a kid's heart, a very sensitive thing, almost like a fine piece of art. You know, like, I don't know, like a Ming vase or something. Vase. A very expensive vase.
Okay.
I probably lost the listeners on that one. But a very expensive vase that, you know, a slight breeze can knock it over if it's, you know, on a pedestal or something like that, and just shatter into pieces. Like, that's how I want to treat my kid's heart. You know, I don't want to treat it like it's this brick that can just take this pounding.
Sure. I mean, I'd say if, you know, that's like a new concept for our listeners, some great resources on that. Paul Tripp has some amazing stuff on shepherding our child's hearts, and it's got some good books, some, you know, video series, and then John Eldredge, you know, author of Wild at Heart, and some other ones.
I think there's actually even a book called Shepherding a Child's Heart. Is that by Eldredge?
I think Paul Tripp. I mean, that's more like what I'm used to hearing him talk. But then John Eldredge is great, just kind of focusing on, like, what boys and men, and, like, what drives us, and kind of the stories we tell ourselves, and that kind of stuff. But Paul Tripp's a little more on, like, the child development side of things.
Yeah. Great resources. And I believe Tim Keller even has resources amidst all his writings.
Probably. I just figured we'd leave out his name on one of the episodes, but... You know.
Sorry.
Roy's
I really blew it on that
stuff.
one. Scratch that from the record. So I want to come back. I'm going to shift gears a little bit from children and being a dad to coming back to that first verse that I shared on husbands, love your wives. So we're shepherding and stewarding our kids' hearts, but there's a similar process that's also going on with our wives in our marriage, right?
Yes.
Yeah, equally important, maybe more important.
I would say more important.
Yeah, more important. So, if you can't shepherd, honestly, like, if you can't shepherd your wife's heart, you're not going to be able to shepherd your kids' hearts very effectively, and vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, I say it's more important because if you have a healthy marriage, it's going to make it a lot easier to have healthy relationship with your kids and parenting. If you got a bad marriage, I would argue that you're not. It's almost impossible to have a good relationship with your kids and a parenting dynamic when they see dysfunction and parents not loving each other well. I don't think you can. I don't think you can have the inverse of that. So, and I say that because partially just my observation. My parents got divorced when I was 18, so I had moved out of the house. They got divorced right after that.
Yeah.
And and I think that. Why am I bringing this up? Where's my train of thought on this one?
Divorce, stewarding, wife's heart, and all that, and the marriage being pretty critical to parenting.
Yeah, that's all true. It didn't help me, though.
Sorry, I was trying to buy time for you.
I know, I appreciate it. I think... I don't remember. Maybe I'll come back to it.
So the piece in the verse that, maybe we can explore a tiny bit. How are we doing on time? We're doing all right?
We're at a half hour.
Half hour? Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
Maybe we won't go a full hour. I don't know. Okay. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. I mean, okay, so just take a look at that piece. Love your wives. And in our case, we only have one wife. Do you have more than one wife?
I can't even keep up with one wife. I don't know how people do with Miller.
Yeah, I don't get some of those religions that engage in polygamy.
Yeah.
At any rate, maybe another topic for another time.
Or maybe not.
Or not. But Christ loved the church, so we're supposed to love our wives the way that Christ loved the church. So at a cursory glance, I think the best way that we can sum up how Christ loved the church is in John 3:16.
Yes.
So Christ literally, physically, emotionally, relationally gives up his life, his essence, his being for us, the church. And so we're supposed to do that. Now, I've heard a lot of guys say things like, especially in my counseling office and we're hanging out with friends, they say things like, oh man, if anybody was ever threatening my wife, or somebody had a gun to my wife, I would, jump in front of a train, jump in front of a bullet, I'd take a bullet for my wife. I was like, okay. Now, in some regards, that feels like a bit of a low-risk statement because most fathers nowadays, I think here in America, aren't necessarily faced with immediate physical danger to their wives and themselves. And so saying things like, oh, I would take a bullet for my wife, it's like, when do you think that would happen? And so then I think to myself, okay, so what does it mean to sacrificially love your wife like Christ loved the church on a daily basis, in our modern day now? So most of us aren't going to necessarily face the physical danger that some of us think about. Mm-hmm. So then I guess it goes down to like emotions, and psychologically, how do we sacrifice ourselves for our wives?
Yeah, that's good. Can we put a bookmark in that for a sec?
Yeah.
I remember what I was going to say.
Oh, perfect.
I was saying, from my experience, from my observation, and maybe you've seen this in your counseling practice, it seems like there's a pretty common trajectory, and the middle class American family where the focus, where the kid is it becomes the center of the family, right? The focus is on the kid, all the money spent on the kid, good school, tutor, whatever it is. Activities and so much of the focus of the family is centered on the kid, and because the parents, the husband and wife, are no longer pursuing each other, they're doing they're taking care of their kid. They drift apart. They become different people, and they don't know each other. There's intentional pursuit of each other, as I would say there should be, biblically speaking. And so once they become empty nesters and their kids move out of the house, they realize, I don't really know you. We're just roommates. Why are we married? And then they get divorced. I mean, you look at at the trajectory of divorces, and I don't know the numbers, but I'd assume there's a big spike in empty nesters, kind of midlife crisis type thing, where they've idolized their parenting for so long and haven't focused on their relationship with their spouse, that the family essentially falls apart after the linchpin was holding together their kids.
Because the foundation was the kids, so they don't have anything else to have the relationship founded on.
Right, and which is why from the very beginning, during our pre-marriage and stuff, they're like, never stop dating your wife.
Right.
Like, always pursue your wife. Because if you don't, you're gonna drift apart, and don't make it all about your kid. And that's kind of the foundation of why I think it's much more important, if you're going to err on something, err on focusing on your spouse and that relationship, not err on neglecting your spouse and focusing on your kid.
Amen to that. Amen to that. And that's why I think this verse, because there's an order to this in Ephesians 5 and 6. So like the one on children comes after it says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. So like that's like the immediate focus.
Right. That's the priority, yeah.
Yeah, that's the priority. And there's a lot to be said for husbands. It goes on to say that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of the water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle, or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. And obviously that's, Paul talking about, Jesus and the church, but we are supposed to, as husbands, be responsible and steward our wives in a very similar fashion.
Right.
And so, for me, I need to know my wife. I need to understand. I need to know what makes her tick. And not just from like a formulaic, like, hey, I need to do this so that so that I engage in that phrase, happy wife, happy life, which I think is complete and utter bullshit. I hate that phrase more than anything, but I hear it come out of a lot of dudes' mouths.
I know. So to me, I hear, I'm going to be a big pussy and do whatever she says, and not leave my family because
like I just want to acquiesce to whatever she says, so that like I can go off and do whatever I want to do.
Right. Which to me, screams like passive, non-committed husband.
Yeah. No. It doesn't lead. It's not. I mean, this is the best the world can come up with, right? Well, just do whatever your wife wants, and because. You want to be able to get out on that hunting trip or that fishing trip, and you want to be able to unplug and uncheck from your family. But that's not what Christ, that's not what God created us to do. He said, hey, I'm going to give you this woman, much like he says to the wife, hey, I'm going to give you this man, and I want you to steward their hearts. And in that process, like you said earlier, which I liked, was that teaches us about the relationship that God has with us. All of this teaches us about the relationship with God. And so we learn about God. Please, yes, thank you. Thank you for pouring me more whiskey as I talk.
Yeah.
Oh, man, this is so good.
Right on your phone.
Right on my... Hey, my phone can take bourbon. It's my phone.
They're bourbon proof.
That's right. They're bourbon proof. So Christ loved the church. So we're called to love our wives like Christ loved the church.
Now, wait a sec. That's only if she loves you back the way you want to be, right?
Interesting point that you just brought up. You're getting into some interesting stuff now.
I mean, it's totally conditional. You only love her if she's a gem and does everything the way you want it to be.
Wait a second. Are you making a distinction on something? You possibly are. Wait. I got it. Conditional versus covenantal.
Yes, unconditional. Yep, covenantal. What is this word covenant you speak of?
Which we would also maybe use the word synonymously with unconditional.
Yes.
Possibly.
Basically, we're called to love our wife, period.
Yeah, regardless.
Not if she loves us back in the same way. Not if she speaks our love language. Not if,
Exactly. Who was the prophet that married a prostitute in the Old Testament? Was it Hosea? I want to say, man, I could be butchering that. But his wife was Gomer.
Yeah, I love that name.
What? I know. I always think about it, I was like, man, what parents hated their kid that much to call their kid Gomer? Any rate, but Gomer, as it goes, was a prostitute, and God wanted Hosea, I think it was Hosea, to marry Gomer and to illustrate what the Israelites were doing to him. And Gomer did what a prostitute does, goes out and prostituted. Yep. And
which
Hosea,
I would not be happy about. I'm just saying, I would not be happy if my wife did that.
But I mean,
be the opposite of happy.
Hosea was totally broken up about it.
Sure.
And he remained faithful, but I mean, he went through the gamut of emotions and stuff like that. And in the end, you see this beautiful story Nobody wanted Gomer because she was used up. She couldn't even be sold in the marketplace to people that, in the sex trade.
Right.
And he comes in and he's like, "You're my wife. I love you." And he clothes her and he brings her back and reconciles her, which, is an amazing story of what Jesus does with us. And so,
sure, it's redemption.
Yeah, through and through. You see redemption throughout all of the Old Testament. You see it in Exodus. You see it in Hosea. You see it everywhere.
Right.
And so we have this theme that is running, that we are to love our wives the way that Christ has loved the church, and gave himself up for the church.
Yeah.
So that's where the sacrifice comes in.
Yeah. I was going to say something else really profound. Yeah. What did you just say? A couple sentences ago.
So this is where the sacrifice piece comes in. That Christ gave himself up for the church, and so we're commanded as husbands to do the very same thing. Now, we might not be called to give our lives, like physical lives, up. And I think sometimes as men, like, we err on the side of protection far more than we err on the side of, like, hey, how am I stewarding the emotions and the relationship nuances with my wife in my marriage? Right.
It's interesting you bring up that story. It kind of gets me thinking about, we as, Westerners and Americans, we tend to think about life being, for our happiness, right? Mm-hmm. For our satisfaction, for our goals, all about us.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness?
Yeah, which I don't think is a bad thing, but as Christians, we need to remember that God has a calling, like, for us as Christians in general, as the body of Christ, but then also for us specifically. And it may not always look the way we want it to look. And I say that because you look at stories of stories in the Bible, and even I'm sure you could pull out stories of triumph and failure in our lives, and like, had we had our druthers, as my grandma would say, it probably would have gone differently.
Yeah.
But God's at work and he's doing something, and it's not always going to be pretty. It's not always going to be what we want. Sometimes God may call you to marry that used up prostitute, which probably wasn't what he was dreaming about as a little boy. I guess I say this that there's a bigger story that we, are part of. There's a big tapestry that God's weaving.
Good use of that word, tapestry.
Yes, thank you. You don't see too many tapestries these days. But I think the point is that, like, God's the creator who's creating the story, and we play a part in that. Yeah. And sometimes, it's a glorious part, and other times, it's not going to be so glorious. It may be as one of the demotivational posters back in the day said, I think I had a picture of, like, the Titanic sinking, said, "Have you ever thought that maybe your whole purpose in life is to serve as a warning to others?" Mm. And I was thinking, it's true. Some people just crash and burn in their life, and God will use that in some way, but it may not be to that person's glory. It may be to the people around them.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see that. What you're talking about, we see several notable examples. One for sure is the two thieves on the cross that flanked Jesus. Yeah. One thief didn't get it; the other thief got it. Right, but they both still died a most horrific. Both, yeah. Both still died for crimes, in a pretty horrific way. But, one of them got known for, like, submitting in, like, a moment of sheer agony, while another, like, committed himself to pride in a moment of sheer agony.
Right.
So it's interesting to me that, here we are. There's Ephesians 5 just focuses so much on husbands. Hey, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. And then, it goes through in Ephesians 6, talks about, like, hey, don't take your anger out on your kids. Love them, shepherd and steward their hearts. So there's a real conscientious focus on husbands and fathers. Hey, you've been given a lot of power and responsibility over this select group of people in your life. Steward them. And that does teach a father and a husband about the relationship with God, that what God does with us.
Yeah.
Which I think is, nothing short of grace.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, unless you've got kind of a different direction you want to take it. I mean, and kind of wrapping up, I mean, one of the things that when it comes to shepherding my kid's heart, one of the things that kind of brings me back to the reality of like what's at stake, my kid's heart's at stake, is often when, he's not compliant, instead of just yelling at him and giving him, consequences and ramping things up, trying to get down on his level, look him eye to eye, trying to use some of those techniques of like, okay, take a deep breath, just like try to calm down a little bit. And then when he's calmed down, talk about, okay, who am I? Okay, I'm your daddy.
Yeah.
Who are you?
Yeah.
You're my son. Do I love you? Yes. Do I only love you when you're good? No, you always love me. Like just getting
That's
to
good.
that,
That's
just
good.
getting to that identity of like, I want good things for you. When you're doing the opposite of what I want you to do, you're choosing a path of foolishness and folly. It's going to lead to destruction.
That's really good.
That doesn't always work, but when I'm calm and he's, I'm able to get him calm, and it also serves as a reminder to me of like what we're really trying. We're not going for compliance. We're going for like a heart being turned around and
Shaped
repentance.
and cultivated.
Yeah, because that's what discipline's supposed to be is teaching, is learning. It's not punitive. It's not
Right.
to punish them. It's to teach them.
Yeah, we're not trying to destroy them.
Right, and that's what repentance is us, turning from our sin, turning back to God. Good, like turning back to going down the road the right way. And that's what we're after. We're not just about stop doing that. We're after, if you continue doing this, it's going to lead to really bad things for you.
Something practical that I do, and maybe this is, a point that listeners can, if you take away something here, is, everything that Christian just said was, intensely practical, and you should be, taking lessons from Christian on that one.
I have to remind myself.
But something I do is, like, when I wake up in the morning, I anticipate and expect my kids to be disobedient. I know that they're going to do that. I don't wake up every morning and go, well, today is going to be a better day because yesterday was a bad day, so the inverse has to happen. So today is going to be a better day. I expect my kids to be disobedient. I expect my kids to not listen to me. I expect my kids to do all of that. And so I don't just go, well, God, I hope today's going to be a good day. Meaning like we have no pain, we have no, conflict or anything like that. I say, Lord, I know that there's going to be conflict. I know that there's probably going to be hard moments throughout the day. Allow me, please, to be reminded of your grace so that I can actually do a good job in those moments. And I find that when I'm actively praying that in the morning, and I'm actively thinking about that, I actually engage in that. I actually do that. I'm actually more aware of that.
So you actually start your day with prayer, focusing on God.
I know it's weird.
Getting your heart.
I know it's weird.
In the
We are in
right
Seattle,
position.
so that,
No, it's good. It's. I always notice my days go better because my expectations are preset. I'm already acknowledging my dependence and need for God, as opposed to being surprised when my kid disobeys me.
Right. Right.
And gives me the proverbial middle finger, like, that's shocking. Why is he doing that? That's weird.
Yeah.
He's acting like a kid.
What? This is new to me. I've never seen this before. Yeah. So I would always, as a dad, I would encourage other dads listening and other dads to be, I suppose, like, your kids are going to disobey. Your kids are going to be
It's true.
Little hellions, and they're going to test your ability to stay in control. And the point is not to be in control necessarily from like a compliance stance, but the point is to operate from a place that Christ is in control, and then shepherd your kid's heart. Your position is not to destroy your kid's heart, but it's to shepherd it. So
That's good.
I don't know that I have much more to say on that. I feel pretty convicted
All right.
by what's been said.
Yeah. And scene. Used to be a thespian. Don't tell anyone.
I won't. It's between you and me. Oh, shoot. Now our listeners. Well, Christian, I feel good wrapping things up on that point.
I agree, Christian.
It's a good name.
Yeah, I like
Good
it.
name.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it.
So we thank you, obviously, to everybody that keeps listening and
Coming back for the abuse.
they keep listening, keep tuning in. We really appreciate you all. We love you lots. We're praying for you. I know that Christian H is praying for you. I occasionally pray for you. No, I pray for you all the We may not know you, but
we want to know you.
We do.
Subscribe on the YouTubes, leave comments, send us DMs.
The Grams.
Yep.
We would love any and all feedback, which we've gotten a lot recently on a couple of episodes, and that's been very encouraging and positive to us, which means that, hey, this is getting out here.
Yeah.
And
we've grown our audience to like 10 listeners. It's awesome.
We want to know.
We want 15.
We want to do this ultimately because we want to spread the word of Jesus, and we want to encourage dads, and we also really want to smoke good cigars and drink good whiskey too. You know.
Yeah.
I'm not ashamed of that.
I'd be happy just getting together talking with you, but we might as well
record it.
Yeah, let other dads hopefully get something out of it too. So.
Yeah. So check us out YouTube, check us out Facebook and Instagram. I don't think there's any other social channels that are worth checking out that I know of. Check those out. Yeah. So, Christian, it's been real. Go be a better dad. Go be a better husband. We're in agreement with that. Okay, we're gonna go do that. Love you guys. Go drink some good whiskey, smoke a good cigar. Peace.